Alright, recording. When I was 18 years old, I saw for the first time in my life, I saw a vision of clarity. I saw a comic strip, a 3-panel comic strip that, though simple as that it seemed, changed me. Changed my being, changed who I am. Made me who I am. Enlightened me. The strip, Garfield. The comic strip was new. No more than maybe a month and a half since inception, since coming into existence. There it was before me in print. I saw a comic strip. What was it called? Garfield. The story here is of a man, a plain man. He is John, but he is more than that. I'll get to this later, but first, let's just say he is John, a plain man. And then there is a cat, Garfield. There is this nature world here. When I see the world, the politics, the future, the satellites in space, and the people who put them there, you could look at everything as a man and a cat, two beings in harmony and at war. So this strip I saw about this man John and the cat Garfield, you see? Yes. It is about everything. This little comic is, oh, lo and behold, not so little anymore. So yes, when I was 18, I saw this comic, and it hit me all at once, its power. I clipped it, and every day I looked at it and said, okay, let me look at this here. What is this doing to me? Why is this so powerful? John Arbuckle, he sits there, legs crossed, comfortable in his home, and he reads his newspaper, the news of the world perhaps. And then he extends his finger. Lightly, delicately, he taps his fingers. And on the name table, he feels for something. What is it? It is something he needs. But it is not there. And then he looks up, slightly cockeyed, and thinks. His newspaper is in his lap now. He thinks this. Now where could my pipe be? This. I always come to this because I was a young man. I am older now, and I still don't have the secrets, the answers, so this question still rings true. John looks up and he thinks, now where could my pipe be? And then it happens, you see, it's almost like divine intervention. Suddenly, it is there, and it overpowers you. A cat is smoking a pipe. It is the man's pipe, it is John's pipe, but the cat is smoking it. Cat Garfield is smoking the pipe. And from afar and from someplace near, but not clear. Near, but not clear. The man calls out. John calls out. He has shot Garfield! He shouts Garfield. It's the cat's name. Let's take a step back, okay? Let us examine this from all sides, all perspectives. When I first came across this comic strip, I was at my father's house. The newspaper had arrived and I picked it up for him and brought it inside. I organized his sections for him, and then yes, the comic strip section fell out from somewhere in the middle. Landed on the kitchen floor. I picked up the paper pages and saw, up somewhere near the top of the strip, just like John, it was an aquamarine shirt. So I thought, interesting. I'll have to see this later. I snipped out the little comic and held onto it. And 5 days later, I re-examined, and it gripped me. I needed to find out more about this. The information I had was minimal, but enough. An orange cat named Garfield. Okay, that seemed to be the linchpin of this whole operation. Yes, another clue, a signature in the bottom right. A man's name. Jim Davis. Yes, I am onto it for sure. So 1, Garfield, orange cat. And 2, Jim Davis, the creator of this cat. That curiously plain man. I did not know at the time that his name was John. The strip you see has no mention of this man's name, and I've never seen it before, but I had these clues. Jim Davis, Garfield. And then I saw more. Spotted the tiny copyright mark, the upper left corner. 1978 to... What's this? Copyright belongs to a Pause Incorporated. I used the local library and mail services to track down the information I was looking for. Jim Davis, a cartoonist, had created a comic strip about a cat, Garfield, and a man, John Arbuckle. Well, from that point on, I made sure I read every Garfield comic strip I saw. But as I read each one, as each day passed, the strips seemed to resonate with me less and less. I sent letters to Pause Incorporated. Long letter, pages upon pages, asking if Mr. Jim Davis could somehow publish just the one comic over and over. It would be meditative, I wrote. The strength of that. Could you imagine? But no response. The strips lost their power. And eventually I stopped reading, but I did not want my perceptions diluted, so I vowed to read the comic strip over and over again. This is what they call it. The pipe strip. The pipe strip. Everything about it is perfect. I can only describe it as a miracle creation. Something came together. The elements aligned like it was comets. The comet orchestra that is up there over your head. The immense, enormous void is working for the one to tell you one thing. Gas, rock, purity, and nothing. I will say this. When I see the pipe strip, and I mean every single time I see it, I look at the lines, the colors, the shapes that makes up the 3-panel comic. I see perfection. Do I find perfection in many things? Some things I would say. Some things are perfect. And this is one of them. I can look at the little tuft of hair on John Arbuckle's head. It is the perfect shade. The purple pipe in Garfield's mouth. How could a mere mortal even make this? I have a theory about Jim Davis. After copious research, and yes, of course, now we have the internet. And this information is already available, but Jim Davis, he used his life experiences to influence this comic. And like I mentioned before, none of them seemed to have the weight of the pipe strip. But you have to wonder about the man who was able to, even just once, create the perfect form. A literally flawless execution of art. Brilliance just isn't a word. I think there is a spiritual element at work. I've seen my share of bad times. And when you have something, well, it's just emotions and neurons in your brain, but something tells you it is the truth. Truth's radiant light. Garfield the cat? Neurons in my brain. It's harmony, you see. John and Garfield. It's truly harmony, like a continuous looping, everlasting harmony. The lavender chair, the brown end table, the salmon-colored walls, forest green carpet, and Garfield is hunched, perched perhaps, with a pipe stuck firmly between his jowls. His tail curls around. It's more than shapes too, because Okay, stay with me. I've done this experiment several times. You take the strip, trace the basic elements. You can do anything. You can simplify the shades down to just blobs, just outlines, but it still makes sense. You can replace the blobs with magazine cutouts of other things. Replace John Arbuckle with a car parked sideways in a driveway. Cut that out of a magazine, stick it in. Replace him there in the second panel with a food processor. Okay. And then we put a picture of a planet in the third panel over Garfield. It still works. These are universal proportions. I don't know how to best to explain why it works. I've studied the pipe strip and analyzed John's and Garfield's proportions against several universal mathematical constants, E, pi, the golden ratio, the Feigenbaum constants, and so on, and it's surprising. Scary, even, how things align. You can take just tiny pieces of the pipe strip, For instance, take John's elbow from the second panel. Take that and project it back over John's entire shape in the second panel, and you'll see a near-perfect Fibonacci sequence. It's eerie to me, and it makes you wonder if you are in the presence of a deity, if there is something larger hand at work. There's no doubt in my mind Jim Davis is a smart man. Jim Davis is capable of anything, to me. He is remarkable, but this is so far beyond that. I think we might see that this work of art is revered and respected in years to come. Jim Davis is possibly a new master of the craft, a genius of the eye. They very well may say the same thing about Jim Davis in 500 years that we say about the great philosophical and artistic masters from centuries ago. Jim Davis is a modern-day Socrates, or Da Vinci, mixing both striking visual beauty with classical daring, unheard-of intellect. Look, he combines these things to make profoundly simple expressions. This strip is his masterpiece. The pipe strip is his masterpiece. And it is a masterpiece and a marvel. I often look at Garfield's particular pose in this strip. He is poised and statuesque, and his cat stare is reminiscent of the fiery gazes often found in religious iconography. But still, his eyes are playful, lying somewhere between the solemn father's expression in Rembrandt's The Return of the Prodigal Son and the coy smirk of Da Vinci's St. John the Baptist. His ears stick up, signifying peaked readiness. It's as if he could at any moment pounce. He is, after all, a close relative of the descendants of the mighty jungle cats of Africa that could leap after prey. You can see the power drawn in Garfield's hindquarters. Powerful hunches indeed. The third panel. Now, just saying this now, this is just coming to me now. The third panel of the pipe strip is essentially a microcosm of the entire strip itself. Power dynamics, the struggle for superiority, right? Who has the pipe? Where is the pipe? All of that is drawn, built, layered in Garfield's iconic pose here. You can see it in the curl of his tail. The ear whiskers stick up on end, the smoke billows upwards, drawing the eye upward. Increasing scope. I'm just amazed. Really, that after 33 years of reading and analyzing the same comic strip, I'm able to find new dimensions. It's a testament to the work. For 6 years I delved into tobacco research because, can a cat smoke? This is a metaphysical question. Yes, can any cat smoke? Do we know? Can just Garfield smoke? The research says no. Nicotine poisoning can kill animals, especially household pets. All it takes is the nicotine found in a single cigarette. Surely, John's pipe holds a substantial amount of tobacco. It is true that pets living in the homes of smokers are nearly 25% more likely to develop some form of cancer. Most likely due to secondhand smoke. These are facts of smoking and its tolls on our world. After visiting processing plants in Virginia, the Philip Morris cigarette facility, I came no closer to cracking the meaning. I was looking for any insight. A detective of a homicide case has to look at every angle, so I'm always taking apart the pipe strip. I focused on every minutia, every detail on this strip. John Arbuckle's clothing. I have replicas, I'm an expert in textiles, so you see the smoking thing was a hang-up for me. What was the statement here? Until... This is key. This is the breakthrough. The pipe is not a pipe, really. Obviously, there is some symbolism at work here. I saw that from the beginning, and I looked literal aspects of the strip to gain insight into the metaphors at play. I worked at a newspaper printing press for 18 months in the late 1980s. I was learning the literal to inform the gestural, subliteral, the in-between, John reading the newspaper means so much more than just John reading the newspaper. But how could you ever hope to decipher the puzzle without knowing everything there is about newspapers? Okay, for example, John holds his paper up with his left hand, thumb gripping the interior. I learned that this particular grip, the newspaper grip of the 19th century aristocrats, and this aristocrat grip was a point of contention that influenced the decision to move forward prohibition in the United States in the early 20th century. So John's hand position is much more than that. It is a comment on class war and the resulting reactionary culture. But I didn't know about the aristocratic newspaper grip until I came across microfiche archives at the printing press. It's about information. You have to take it apart. And the breakthrough on a smoking cat came late. Just 8 years ago, actually. Smoking cat is an industry term. And it's what the smoking industry calls a tattletale. Teenager who tells on his friends after they've all tried smoking for the first time. And it's actually a foreign translation, bastardization of the term smoking rat. But the phrase was confused when secret documents went back and forth between China and America. These documents are still secret, and the only reason I know about the term is I know a man, my friend. Well, let's call him Timothy. Yes, it's a fake name for his protection. Timothy worked for Philip Morris for 16 years, and he had seen the documents. When he told me, it was an aha moment. And he said, but how? How could this cartoonist Jim Davis know about this obscure term from the mid-70s used exclusively by a few cigarette companies? This is still a mystery to me. But I connect the dots, noting Jim Davis's childhood experiences on a farm. He must have seen something. What could it be? Timothy went on to tell me about this particular smoking cat, a boy from, Indiana. A boy named Ernie Barguckle, who became a thorn in the side of the tobacco companies for a couple of years. And he did more than to tattle to his parents. He and his family took legal action, and he got a huge settlement payout. That name is too similar. Ernie Barguckle. John Arbuckle. Jim Davis must have used this. There's more here. Ernie Barguckle spent nearly half that settlement money on experimental medical procedures to cure his impotence. He was impotent. So he was a smoking cat with a metaphorical pipe that did not work. Are you starting to see the layers here? It's exciting stuff, and you start to get the whole picture here, and it forms a work. It's just remarkable. Jim Davis took these raw ideas, these pieces, and he transformed them into a smart social commentary that is also ravishingly beautiful. I have cried. I've cried over this piece. It's just, it gets into my soul. I tried to explain this to people. I have the newspaper articles about Ernie Barguckle. People have fought me on this. They don't see it. They're too close-minded. How can a comic strip about a cat smoking a pipe mean any more than that? But it is more. When I feel spiritual or start to think existentially, I still see this comic. Here is something from 1981 that I wrote, thinking about the implication of this strip. This is just an excerpt here. There's more before and after, but this is part of this instance of me. The smoking cat about... The strongest evidence... Many of you say, oh, I am not blind. I have never been blind. And when you truly see, you will understand just how truly blind you once were to even think it was right to say you were not blind. What does a blind man see? Blackness? Darkness? Blankness? Black darkness? Dark blankness? The absence of things. Quite literally, no thing. No things. Nothing. Nothings. So you see, I bring you into the light. A cat has your pipe. You've been blind. Do you understand this? The cat has your pipe. You can't fully immerse yourself, you don't have the light. You don't have the radiance, the radically radiant light of the truth. Truth belonging, love, and nature of light. And loving, truthful radiance. So don't be so bold. And make bold statements I know of you. The cat has your pipe. The cat has your pipe. Remember that. That writing, well, it's kind of rough. Kind of an early 80s feel. And I see that. But I'm still proud of it. Sometimes I imagine that is editorial on the newspaper of John Arbuckle's. Reading is just exercise in recursion. It's like a vortex opens up. Like you hold two mirrors up to each other. This one's reality and the other one's a cartoon script. Let's see. Oh yes, I must bridging this up because I think surely Jim Davis is again speaking on multiple levels by including the details set before us in this comic. Notice the glimpse of John Arbuckle's foot in the first panel. The size of the shoe would indicate that maybe the man just has small feet. But deeper investigation takes us to foot binding rituals of certain Asian cultures, inflicted usually on women for the desire of men. This practice was incredibly painful and crippling. Aha! Mr. Davis is here presenting us with a man, or rather, man, who engages in foot binding, a body modification for women on top of being without his pipe or impotent. This man facing extreme inner turmoil. The panel tells that story, subconsciously. Notice the background wall, shading of the first panel, points inwards towards John in the second panel. And then, the sharp tapered end of the purple pipe also points to John in the second panel, inward. The eye is drawn to the center of the panel. You can connect these points, draw a triangle across the panel. This triangle will align with reoriented points of John's collar. This is majestic artwork, and to uncover this unhidden is bliss, comforting in a empty world. I can't help but read the thought bubble again and again. Now where could my pipe be? Now where could my pipe be? It is a profound question. Why am I here? What is my purpose? It is reflection and self-examination here. It is facing the dust, the misery of a cold, careless universe. You can feel the weight of it. Now where could my pipe be? One imagines the author Jim Davis nearly on the edge of insanity, his rationality, his lucidity hovering over the void, and he seeks the truth. You can see it in the line quality of the drawings, the thoughtful, controlled outlines mixed with the occasional chaotic scribbles that lurk in the shadow of Garfield's dark stripes. It's almost as if Garfield is chaos himself. Yes. He is the embodiment of chaos, disorder, hatred, fear, thievery, death, destruction, desolation. These are the things Garfield represents. He stole the pipe. He sits with his back to John. Garfield. Garfield. Garfield, this chaos cat Garfield, has turned his back on everything, everyone. One recalls the great existential forces in literature. Camus' Meursault, Kafka's Gregor Samsa, or Sartre Antoine Roquentin. Garfield the cat sees the hopelessness of life, which... Yes. This is why J.M. Davis has chosen smoking. It represents a recklessness, a disregard for what some would define as the beauty of life. Garfield may die from the nicotine. He may not. He defies life. He sits defiant, saying nothing, but looking as if he could say, "Then let me die." It does not matter. It does not matter. And we are faced with this. Could John behave the same? Is John the glimmer of hope? He seems to be unsure. Again, his question. Now where could my pipe be? Indicates that he's wrestling with his own existence. The center panel centers the issue, and again, this harkens to many of the great religious works of art. I'm talking about the pipe strip. In relation to religion, it's interesting to assign the roles of God and anti-God, or as many know him to be, the devil. Or on a much larger scale, simply the forces of good and evil. Garfield, the thief cat, evil and malicious. He is the devil, placed to the right. And note the forms of John. John on the left, still innocent, still draped in delight of lack of knowledge. He is the humans in the Garden of Eden. He feels for his pipe, but he has yet to eat from the tree. And Garfield, the sinister serpent. Notice how Jim Davis has framed this. The center John is locked between a struggle, between his innocence and knowledge of the truth, knowledge of the existence of evil. It is stunning. The great struggle, the struggle that transcends time. Jim Davis floats over all of this as creator. God, of sorts, in his own right. And he presents this cautionary message to us all. It is as if he is speaking from high, and he is saying unto our awaiting ears, where will you be when the cat reveals himself? I can tell you where it will be. You will have a choice. You can face endless suffering and eternal misery. You can be forced and beaten down with barbarians who claw at each other just for a view of salvation. They'll tear your eyeballs out and rip your gizzards from end to end. They worship this cat, this false idol, this evil, horrible cat. Do not be seduced by the cat in the pipe. Garfield, by name, is a mark of the demons of hell. Something like this. This listening is a stark reminder to follow the path of the first panel, John. Be humble, be grateful. Honor the law and honor thyself. Be true, be good, and no harm will come to. Pray for salvation, and it will be granted unto you. Be like John Arbuckle as he lowers his head. Be like John Arbuckle as he's lowered his paper, as he turns his head. Bow with John Arbuckle and praise unto the Creator, Jim Davis, and banish Demon Garfield from your life. So, what is all this? What am I saying? What does this all mean? Why is this one comic strip so important to me? Why do I feel the need to share this? Obligation. I have an obligation to you. This is a redemption. This is a belief in redemption. A sacrifice of all the obvious trappings of this false modern life. Look at the simplicity in this strip, in the pipe strip. Look at the simple clothes John wears. Look at the simple basic furniture. No adornments on the wall. Even the very pipe his cat Garfield stole. It is plain, modest pipe. And I have adapted this way of life. It speaks to me. In our times, well, you don't need to point out the hyperbole of the times. You have children being born 8 or 9 at a time. You have more money being spent on a single Hollywood movie than some nations can spend on feeding their starving people. Torture, distrust. Look around you, it's overwhelming. What can you contribute? And every day I look in the mirror, and I hold this comic up to the mirror, and I look into the mirror, and I look at this little comic strip. Be humble. Be thankful. It is a reminder. Be respectful. You are a statue. You are fragile. When you break, when you shatter, where will those pieces go? Ask this question. Ask this question. Will you ask? Humankind is only great as you. You, the individual. It begins and ends with you. You must treat this expedition, this search, this life with a reverence, with intensity found only in the smallest sticks, the littlest leaf, the tiniest stone, the most minuscule grain of sand on a beach of billions. This is the secret. Do you want the pipe? Do you want to know where the pipe has gone? You ask yourself. You ask. Now where could my pipe be? When I was young, remember now, I first saw this comic when I was 18 years old, ages ago. But I was youthful, vibrant. For weeks I denied that a comic strip was having such a profound effect on me. I was much like John Arbuckle in this middle panel. He says, "Now where could my pipe be?" You could look into his eyes, his half-lowered eyes, and think to yourself, "Now surely, John, surely you cannot be this naive. This is nothing new for you." And if you've read more of the Garfield comic strips by Jim Davis, you understand what I'm saying now. The Garfield the cat does this thing. He does things like this all the time. He will take things from John, food, items, anything. This is his very nature. So you see, this is what you want to say. John Arbuckle, come on now. You are lying to yourself. You are lying to yourself and to all of us if you pretend to have not any idea where your pipe has gone. Perhaps you think you've left it somewhere else, but you're not so forgetful. You are lying to yourself. Yes, you are lying to yourself, John Arbuckle. You know that Garfield has the pipe. Somewhere deep down, you know this. You don't even need to think the question. And that was me when I saw that strip. 1 week had passed, and each morning I'd open my drawer, slammed it shut again, and would go look at the comic. But I'd pause and think, nah, I don't need this comic. I don't need to look at it. I don't need it. But there I was, lying to myself. I did need to see it. And so did I. I did. It's cathartic. You give in, and that is the transition. From the second panel of life to the third panel of life. It is a simple story structure, the passage from second act to third. The twilight of things. John gives into his suspicions. He knows the truth. He always knows the truth. He yells out, "Garfield! Garfield! Garfield!" It's like a pressure from a steam valve being released. The buildup is unbearable, and then it's gone. So it is like this when I speak about the truth, the light, the radiance. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is the essence of this brilliant word of art. This practical mixing, meeting, agreeing with the spiritual. It's all here. But spiritually, it's not an easy thing to confront. You might find yourself able to wrap your mind around a simple math problem or a basic newspaper article. But intellect is much less subjective. What is spirituality? And how have I found spiritual peace and serenity in Garfield? A long time ago, after I encountered the pipe strip, I spent some time, as I mentioned before, soul-searching. When something impacts you or alters your very perception so greatly, there is a little period of confusion, recovery time. It's as if you don't know who you are, and that can be a very scary prospect, especially if you thought you had a good grasp on that sort of thing. Imagine if Jim Davis did not know who he was. Would he be capable of shaping the cultural landscape as he's done? No. Of course he would. And how about his characters? John. What if Jim Davis suddenly woke up and didn't know who John was? What if he couldn't make the informed decisions to accurately depict Garfield's personality because he couldn't specify or demarcate the boundaries of Garfield's behavior? What kind of comic would that be? You see? Draw the parallels. I saw this comic, and yes, I was disoriented. And if I didn't reconcile the issue with myself, what kind of person would I be? Undoubtedly dire circumstances, but remember, this was not a math problem, this was not an article. This was not something I just figure out. as I was skeptical, as I realized that faith and spirituality were avenues that required exploring. At first, I tried long nights reading Garfield by candlelight, or aromatic meditation settings while thinking of Garfield, but nothing snapped. Nothing clicked. I still felt lost. But I kept it up. I hired a shaman, a young personal yogi, Sikh guru, Avram Dab Singh Sahib. I pushed and pushed, determined to find myself. And then a miracle happened. Upon retrieving my morning paper to clip the Garfield comic, I noticed a young girl selling lemonade. 2 houses down, she sat occupied at her stand, but she had no customers in sight. So I approached and saw that she was coloring. I looked at the drawing. 3 rectangular boxes, a man in a blue shirt, an orange cat, and I knew what it was. Crude scribbles, I knew exactly what it was. She was drawing a Garfield comic. I looked up the words and I saw that in her strip, John asked Garfield to retrieve a newspaper. Funny, since I'd done just that myself. Garfield is sarcastic but agrees to it. He returns and calls John Sahib. John exclaims that the paper's all chewed up, but then Garfield says, and I quote, Sahib asks fish, paper is wet. Sahib asks cat, paper is holy. I remember the words and ran back to my house, and I thought, how odd that Sahib shows up in the strip, and my spiritual advisor's name is Avram Dab Singh Sahib. Coincidence, surely, but nonetheless, I spent the next 16 hours poring through my clipboards, my clippings of the Garfield comics. This young girl that I had colored, and I eventually fell asleep right on my kitchen table. Next morning I retrieved my paper again and I clipped the Garfield comic. The date was July 12th, 1983. And there it was, the Sahib strip in all its glory. The girl had been drawing the next day's strip. Well, I ran out of my house and I ran back to where she was. But she was gone. In place, the lemonade stand was a for sale sign. They moved out. I rushed back to the house, trying to call Avram, but I was informed that he had moved away as well. I reeled back for several hours, then it all connected to me. It was meant to be. It was meant to be this way. Jim Davis, John, Garfield. It was always meant to be this way for me. They move to the forefront and everything else fades away. Everything else, the girl, the lemonade stand, Avram Dab Singh Sahib. It all existed to show me the way, and when I found a way, everything else melted away. It was a beautiful miracle. And if July 27th, 1978, the day I first saw the pipe strip, was the first day of my life, and that day, July 12th, 1983, was the second day of my life. I've never looked back. Garfield has transformed me. And I am a man born anew because of Garfield. When I was in my mid-30s, I was interviewed for a documentary. It was a documentary on the subject of cat behavior. Now, I've had cats all my whole life. I have 3 cats now, and at that time of this documentary interview, I had 4 cats. I sat down for the interview and I was joined by a veterinarian who specialized in felines. Dr. Caroline Wellmitz was her name, I believe. And the doctor discussed color blindness in animals and how it affects their behavior. She specifically brought up the fact that cats are red-green colorblind. They can see colors, but they can't tell the difference between red and green. And look at the color choice in this strip. Here, Garlic sits on the green floor, behind a pinkish red wall. I heard this and I immediately pulled a copy from my wallet to show the doctor. I moved so fast, I'm sure I scared her. I pointed at the paper and said, like this, look at this here. This cat, Garfield, he's colorblind. He must be. That must be the answer here. Like this. As overexcited as I was, I managed to take in her response. She said yes. A cat in the room would have a hard time differentiating the wall from the floor. Add to that, a cat's known spatial confusion, and you have the makings of a cat rage room. Now she informed me that this isn't exactly common knowledge among cat owners, but a seasoned cat owner, or someone particularly perceptive, will have picked up on it. So what's incredible here, not only is Garfield's behavior symbolic of the devil, and all the evil constructs in the world, but also it is rooted in science and scientific fact. Look at that. You cannot spell fact without cat. Just a little joke there. Alright, just some wordplay. But getting back on track. You can't spell track without cat. Okay. Okay, I digress. I got you. Enough kidding around. It is established that Garfield is in a rage, an ultimate rage of fury and hatred, caused by color blindness. We know the what. We know the why. But let us examine the how. The how of his rage is particularly interesting here. We've looked at his posture, called it powerful, in control, statuesque, etc., etc. Composed rage. It's peculiar. And I've talked to a number of psychologists and psychiatrists and even a couple of anger management therapists about this concept. Do we see the same kind of behavior in a human? Is Garfield representative of something more specific than just chaos and rage? Deciphering this is going to take some perseverance for sure. The psychologists pointed to a phenomenon in humans, and yes, I believe the other anger management counselors brought it up as well. The idea that people oftentimes will bottle their rage. Garfield the cat here. He could be bottling his anger inside, shoving it deep into his cat gut, and deal with it at a later time. Nah, that's not exactly right. Garfield has already acted out. He's already stolen the pipe. He's smoking the pipe. He's already dealt with his anger. He's already lashed out, psychologically. What is going on here? What is this cat doing, and how does it impact his owner, John Arbuckle, psychologically? Well, Garfield is angry. He is acting on his anger. But is this passive anger or aggressive anger? Passive. It is passive because if Garfield had a problem with John specifically, he's choosing a passive way of dealing with that problem. He has not confronted John and said, "John, I have a problem with the way you've decorated this room. As a cat, I am colorblind and this room sends me into a rage. You've created a rage room for me here, and I don't like it. I want you to change it." Instead of that confrontational approach, though, Garfield has chosen to steal John's pipe. And that in turn angers John. But John decides to be aggressively angry. Yell out at Garfield. So now, instead of a calm conversation between two respectful parties, you have two heated, angry individuals, each with a problem, and no direct line of solving it. The layered emotions here tell a story with tight, focused brevity that would make Hemingway weep. This is an entire drama in just 3 panels, people. Let's not miss the humor of the situation, the absurdity of it all. For certainly there is a reason of the visual shorthand for drama includes both the crying mask and the laughing mask. Comedy and tragedy complement each other and melt together to create drama. Tension, the height of humanity, the peak of art that reflects back to us our own condition. And here in its basest form, we can laugh at this comic. Yes, comic. In which a cat smokes a pipe. When was the last time you seen such a thing in your life? Never, I presume. I certainly never have. The Greek's muse, Thalia's presence is so strong in this work of art here. Comedy. It is comedy. And if you look at the structure again, you'll see the perfect form of thirds work magically for the transmission of yes, a joke. This joke is as old as time. Even cavemen told jokes, and the joke here is that John has lost his pipe, or he thinks he has. But lo and behold, it is the cat, Garfield, who has the pipe. Surprise, surprise, the cat is smoking! Again, the transition from setup to punchline takes place between the second and third panel. But make no mistake, the comic is more than just a comic. Yes, it is funny, of course it is. It is operating at the height of sophisticated humor on par with any of Shakespeare's pursing wit. On the one hand, Garfield, the comic, with a John, the man, humor as art. On the other hand, Garfield comic with John, the man, stirring, no, riveting drama. As with everything, it is tension, release, It's a cycle. I keep returning to his idea because it is so omnipresent. Yes, you could, and yes, I have done this on more than one occasion. You could print out a strip on a giant piece of paper. Dimensions would be something like 34 inches by 11 inches. Now take the ends together, the comic facing inward, and stick your head in the middle of this Garfield comic loop and read. Start at the first panel. John is reading the newspaper. He feels for something on the end table. Second panel. He sets the newspaper down. And he thinks, now where could my pipe be? And then the payoff, the third panel. Garfield has John's pipe and is smoking it. The paper is in a loop around your head so that you can see, well, once again, John is in his seat reading the newspaper, and so on and so on. You can literally read the comic strip for an eternity. I spent many relaxing Sunday afternoon reading the strip over and over. I'm reminded of the Portuguese death carvings, which always begin and end with the same scrawled image. So this idea of repetition, beginning and end, the end and being the beginning, it's not new, it's ageless tradition, among the best storytellers humanity has ever offered. And I'm not wrong to include cartoonist Jim Davis in that exalted set for this particular strip alone. I'm not foolish enough to deny great art is subjective, divisive even, and that for some people see this Garfield comic strip and shrug, no real reaction. But I will say that I believe everyone in the world should see it. At least, very least, see it. You should all see it, read it, spend some time with it. Spend an hour reading it. What's an hour? Yes, you could watch some television program, or you could play some fast-paced video games or computer games. Yes, you could all do all those things, but it's just an hour. And if you give this strip a chance, if you look into John Arbuckle's eyes, if you look into John Arbuckle's soul, you might find that you'll really be looking into your own soul. It is self-discovery, that is what I'm talking about here. You have the opportunity, the possibility it could change you. Don't be afraid. You know, just last week I was eating lunch near the municipal court, like I do every Thursday, and there was a plumbing van parked out in front. A plumber would step out of the court and retrieve something from this van every so often. A few times this happened. I thought nothing of it, just a plumber doing some work at the court. And then he came out and he looked through his van, and it was clear he couldn't find something. I noticed and thought, well, that's sort of similar to the Garfield comic. Someone looks for something, can't find it. But yes, that probably happens a billion times a day around the world. But then this plumber put his hands on his hips, and he said, scratching his head, "Now where could my pipe wrench be?" Well, I leaped off the bench, sandwich still in hand, and I rushed and I shouted, "What was that you just said?" He looked at me and said, "What? I can't find my pipe wrench?" No. Say it like you just said it. He scratched his head and repeated, "Now where could my pipe wrench be?" I slapped him on the back. It's Garfield! Oh, he looked so confused, so I said it again. "Garfield, your orange cat took it." Then I laughed and laughed. And he smiled back and went back into the courtroom. And I walked away, knowing that the plumber and I, two complete strangers, have bonded over this Garfield comic. You see, life imitates art, becomes a common ground. I still have a feeling that if I see this plumber, we'll be sharing stories like two old friends because we've been united by art. We have a common love for Jim Davis and his characters, his writings, the humor, the drama, that rascal, Garfield the cat. And by the way, if you're wondering what I was having for lunch that day, it was a ham sandwich with an apple and potato chips in a bag. I had a soda as well. I think it's important to view the pipe strip in philosophical terms. We've touched briefly on the notion of existentialism. That theme is very prevalent in this strip. Garfield is in fact a modern existential anti-hero. But if Garfield embodies the bewilderment in a meaningless life, what is John? What are the telltale signs that inform John's philosophical standpoint? His approach, what style of thinking he represents? John is depicted as being grounded in the material world, where all the things he is surrounded by objects, and he touches these objects and he interacts with them. The newspaper, the end table, the chair, his clothes, all physical things make up John's world. In some sense, even his cat Garfield is an object to him, a thing. The first ideology that comes to mind when thinking of the objects in the tangible world is pragmatism. Is John Arbuckle a pragmatist? His beliefs stem from a useful, coherent views of his environment. A sort of cause and effect understanding of his world helps him. A. Deduce that his pipe is missing, and B. Catch his cat Garfield using the pipe. This kind of empirical and logical thinking lends credence to the idea that John is indeed a pragmatist. Although it is hard to entirely ignore the rest of the Garfield comic canon. While Garfield is consistently anarchic and embraces the chaos and absurdity of life, John Arbuckle exhibits an erratic, unpredictable mix of philosophical behaviors. At times, he is delusional, an idealist, an almost slap-happy version of Don Quixote. Other moments he is rigid, nearly to the point of being obsessive, somewhat like a structuralist. And he certainly has streaks of sarcasms and negativity that might classify him as a skeptic. But isn't there some universal truth in this approach? How can how can John Arbuckle just be one thing? How can any of us be just one thing? We're an amalgamation of ideas of emotion, conducts, functions, thoughts, and feelings. John may very well inhabit tenets of nearly every major philosophical tract known to man. We all might. Characters are reduced to make them recognizable, definable. A story needs a good guy, and a story needs a bad guy. But rarely is one person defined in such black and white terms, even Garfield, with all his bad behavior. Machiavellian motivation and general ne'er-do-well attitude can be kind of thoughtful. You just have to find that rare strip. Speaking philosophically about the entire Garfield franchise, it's an incredibly accurate depiction of life. Its bold lines and bright colors are merely a facade, a red herring, a lie. The cartoon is not a cartoon at all. It is not a caricature. It's not a caricature even though it's adopting a caricature as its visual style and tone. But I don't really like to speak in broad terms, sweeping generalizations about Garfield. The comic has been running for over 30 years, and try to boil that down is just... it's impossible. And to think the only way that any historian worth his salt will agree with me is to look at individual moments, isolated instances, single comic strips. Can I discuss this one comic strip in the context of the entire run of Garfield? Yes, I do. Just as a film historian might analyze the history of all movies by analyzing one movie, or a war enthusiast might look at a single battle's impact on an entire war. The pipe strip is just an instance in the lives of John and Garfield. Perhaps John is not a pragmatist at all. Let's look at this again. Maybe John is exhibiting the traits of a rationalist thinker. His question, now where could my pipe be, is a clue that his thought process stems from the early rationalist questions posed by René Descartes. The well-known quote, "I think, therefore I am," attributed to Descartes, is applicable. Another close look at the strip and we see that Jim Davis chose to draw John thinking his question, now where could my pipe be? John does not speak this question aloud. So Jim Davis is also exploring the mind and body duality. John's question operates on the level of a literal question, but it also examines the nature of reality. Jim Davis's epistemological approach tells us something about the human condition. John's thoughts remain the focal points of this strip. The comic is quite literally centered in his thoughts. Now where could my pipe be? This is reality. This is where cognition and the power and function of the mind take over. As Plato believed the body is just a shell for John Arbuckle, yes, he can use his physical body to read his paper and cross his legs, but these inputs of touch and sight, hearing, etc., these senses are the triggers of the mind. As we see, the mind is something greater. It is the originator of ideas. And ideas are forever, immortal. Immortality through thought, a major theme in literature and philosophy. Isn't that what Mr. Jim Davis himself has achieved? Will he live forever? The universe will continue to spread outward, and entropy will turn into a chaotic infinity, into a homogeneous controlled system. This will take billions of years, and in time, humans will push technology to heights we can't even imagine. We'll explore and inhabit space and occupy more and more of the universe, just as time allowed our ancestors to multiply in numbers and populate more and more of the earth. And as the specific people come and go, their physical bodies will be born and grow and die, their thoughts will remain. In Jim Davis's comics, his glorious Garfield comics, a recorded idea of his that will still be here, even when Earth is no longer inhabitable. And humanity has long since moved to bigger planets that carry with them a record we all keep, mark my words, and look at what we've started. What is the internet? What is the online world, if not a record? Never-ending feed of ideas, immortal ideas forever placed in either dualism. What is an idea? Where does it live? How does it manifest itself? Can it live forever? Will it live forever outside of these physical husk of ours, our bodies? And John Arbuckle and Garfield started merely as thoughts. But they've become so much more. That old cliche rings true. Taking a life of their own, and life may not be what they think. Life brings to mind a beating heart, breathing lungs, blinking eyes. But the real life is in our imagination. Who better embodies the definition of imagination if not a simple man? A cartoonist who puts his ideas to paper so that they may live on, so that our children and our children's children and our children's children's children can access the wealth of ideas that have accumulated thus far. They will plug themselves into an information grid and they will have access to everything. They will read every Garfield comic strip. 80,000 years from now, a child will see simple John Arbuckle reading a newspaper. He will feel around for something, but that something is not there. He will lift his head and think, now where could my pipe be? And Garfield will be smoking the pipe. And John will yell, Garfield! And what then? 80,000 years from now, the child reading this comic will smile. And that smile will transcend space and time, and the physical limitations of this existence, whatever it may be, however many dimensions exist, there will always be Garfield. And there will always be its creator, Jim Davis. Jim Davis.